Good morning, Deborah. Welcome to week 2 of She Critique. Thank you for submitting some more images for me to take a look at. I'm loving the stuff that you guys are sending me, and I'm enjoying taking a few moments to look them over and see if we have any ideas on how to maybe improve them, or maybe they're perfect. The first image you sent me is of a family, and as you said, it's posing them can be a little awkward and such, but first off, the light and airiness of it is actually really nice. It's very clean, it's crisp. I love everything about the color and the editing and everything. It looks just a teeny bit blown in these areas. So just like from last week, how I mentioned, working with the recovery tool and making sure you're not blowing out some of these highlight areas, maybe a teeny bit here and here. Just work on that when you're editing, is always looking for these blown out areas. And, if you've shot too wide or overexposed a little too much, then, you can sometimes fix it with recovery. But if not, try to just bring your exposure down a notch or two when you're shooting to avoid too much overexposure when you have the whites like this. But other than that, I like how clean and crisp it is. I think it looks very good. The second thing I noticed is her feet here. I'm not sure what lens you're using. I know it says it was at 50 millimeter, but you could have been using 24 to 70 or something like that. But I feel like it's a little bit distorted on these edges here, so her feet look really long and almost like stretched in a sense. So they're a little bit distracting. I'm not sure if we can maybe, crop this in a little to take out some of the distraction of those. It's still, I think I like your negative space a little better. I would center this just a little bit. But, sometimes this is just due to the lens or just the angle. The one thing you do if you're looking through the camera and notice that, the feet in the foreground are a little too distracting, it's just, especially for a girl, is just have her kick her legs sideways out to the side here. He's just fine. You've got a good pose for him. But if you have her kick her legs and have her lean on her hip a little bit, that would help. And that also brings us to posing. One of my favorite, easy, tried and true, pretty much never fails pose for, families is getting mom and dad to sit hip to hip to each other. Because it usually creates an automatic triangle. When it gets their heads closer, you avoid this awkward negative space right here, which looks like, they're not close and cozy. So if you bring mom over and have her tuck right in here with dad, her hip here, kicked her legs out to the side, you immediately have them slightly connected. And then you can pop the little girl on dad's lap, or you could sit her right in the middle, like in between, in front of them a little bit, and then have one of them hold the baby. And that way, they're a little more close-knit and a little more comfortable. If you can't get everybody looking at the camera, it is cute that she's looking at the baby. You could have her maybe kiss the baby when mom and dad are looking at you, or you can just have everybody looking down at the baby, and that helps make it look a little more intimate, a little more voyeuristic. That way, it looks like you caught a moment rather than a typical portrait. I understand everybody wants to try to get everybody looking at the camera, but always getting the other option. I try to shoot it both ways, everybody looking at me, but when you have children that aren't, doing as you ask, which is very, very typical of this age group, is have everybody kind of snuggle in together and look at the baby or kiss the baby or something like that. But otherwise, like I said, I think overall it's not bad. You got great smiles and face reactions out of them. I would just like to see them a little more close together and maybe get mom in a different position, tucking her legs in or something like that. But other than that, I think you did a great job. Good job. Let's see what the second image we have here is, this one. And in your description, you mentioned that, you felt, there was a very tight area. You had a hard time, because it was a very, very close area, getting different angles and such, that you were up on a ladder. And then also that her elbow might have seemed a little awkward to you. First, I'd like to go into the positives and again say, I think your processing is looking really good. You're still blowing just a little bit, so I want you to maybe work on that. But other than that, You know, you got good skin color. It's clean, it's crisp, it's natural. So I think overall, you're finding good light. I think you might just be pushing your exposure just a hair too much in camera, and then when you're going to edit, it takes it just too far. So just watch that in your in camera. But otherwise, I love your colors, and I like the light source that you found. I love working next to windows, so I think that's great. And I actually don't mind the tight crop. I tend to shoot back, and for in nice and tight like this, I think it creates a sense of intimacy. Um, so that's definitely a good idea. I will agree with you that I feel like her elbow is a little awkward. You could try to avoid that if this is your only area that you could have worked, or the only angle you could have cut into. This would help alleviate the total distraction of the elbow is by cutting it in even tighter. Um, but I also would have suggested maybe shooting a little more from this angle if you could. I know you said you were in a tight area, so you might not have been able to, but if you shoot a little more this way, kind of more direct on the baby, the elbow would, oh, sorry about that. The elbow would have fallen behind the baby and behind the baby's head, and it wouldn't have been as awkward. That, or taking the baby and curling her up into the mom's shoulder and getting them a little closer that way, so mom didn't have to hold her up with her elbow. She could have been less resting up against the mom's chest and shoulder area. And sometimes, when you're dealing with people and new babies, or just in general, anybody in front of a camera, they hold them and they kind of get awkward. So sometimes you just got to get in there and fix them. I will even, kind of, take the baby and, shift her up and show her what you're trying to talk about, because they're really not seeing it. They're nervous or a little anxious. So, just shifting the baby up against her chest and tuck her head, kind of up near her neck and chin area would have gotten them a little more intimate, a little closer. And it might have been easier for her to drop that elbow down and be a little more relaxed. But otherwise, again, love your color, love the light, and love that you're getting it nice and tight, and you were trying to work out, difficult situations. So I really don't think it's bad. I understand, those tight areas can get a little tricky. But again, once you take this to an 8x10 even, you're going to be in here, and that alleviates your elbow just a little bit. So you might want to, just like I said, if you take this off, you don't notice it as much, so it's not so bad. But good job. I think you're on the right track, and everything's looking really good, and you're working out problems, and I think that's great. Next image. We have the little girl at the creek, and you said it was you were trying something a little different, and you really like the concept, and you're not sure exactly if you like it or not. And then you mentioned that mom was making ripples in the water. And, I love the location. I think it is gorgeous. And I kind of would like to see more images from this location to see what you did with it, the other possibilities, because I see it. I'm like, oh, you could do this and this. And I know you were going for a reflection shot specifically for this image. And, I think that, again, great location, everything. I think the two things I see is, looking at your other two images, how light an area they are, is that this feels dark. One thing I would suggest, as you're finding your way through photography, and it's a lesson that we all have to learn as we're trying out different styles and trying out different things, is kind of finding your feel in your look and your niche, and finding consistency, and trying to stick with that. If you tend to like cooler image, try to make them all a little cooler. If you tend to like them really warm, make them all warm. If you like them moody and crisp and a little more contrasty like this, then do that. If you like them light and airy, then do that. You're going to have some, images you're going to throw in here and there that are a little darker and such, but there's a way to make these images still this image, but consistent with your other work. And that's just in editing and the way you're exposing. And then also avoiding dark areas like this if you wanted to go lighter, or vice versa. And then looking like in your greens, I think just based on past images I've seen, your greens tend to be warmer. So I think you might like your images warmer, and that's perfectly fine. But like I said, keep in mind your overall style and look, and try to work on keeping that consistent. Just as a rule of thumb in general, it's just going to make your portfolio look very cohesive and very much your style. I did notice the ripple. It actually bothered me. So personally, I know that you're trying to make it a little you know, different, but I found it distracting when I'm looking at the image that instead of just noticing her reflection and the light ripples of the water, this very large ripple and then, you know, the major wave in her body actually bothered me. I think it would have been a little more peaceful and a little more natural if it was just this little girl, you know, in her reflection. And then maybe even have her look off. So she's not looking straight down at her own reflection. It's just having her look off. So it's a little, again, a little more natural and a little more voyeuristic as you kind of came on to this moment. And just simple changes in the pose like that. You know, you can shoot it this way. I would have done that. I would have shot it like several different ways. I would have shot it this way. I would have shot her down, maybe looking down back over her shoulder, or just out like she saw something in the woods and just kind of curious and pondering. And when you have them avoiding a direct look, it just makes it look a little more like you walked onto a scene and you shot it, and it gives it a little more of that natural feel. But again, I think I would have avoided the large ripple just because it distorted her, or maybe at least shot it both ways and determined later which one I liked better. And then maybe side by side, you would have said, you know what, I think I like the more calm one a little better, because this ripple can give you, it feels a little aggressive. It's very distracting, and it takes it from, it makes it less peaceful, less calm. And when somebody's looking at the image and they don't, you know, weren't there and didn't have a direct feeling, those are the kinds of things they're going to start feeling just based on, you know, her body language. She looks mid-step with her hands. You know, it just doesn't look relaxed. So you want your viewer to come onto the image and just kind of take a breath and just want to sit here and look at it for a minute. But they're going to want to wander away if they feel a little tense or distracted. So let me open this here in ACR for you, just to give you an idea of, let me see, oh, I'd already tweaked this one a little bit, I think. No, okay. But what I would have done is maybe tweaking the contrast a little, bringing in, taking a little bit of the yellow out of the greens. You can up your exposure. If you're having recovery issues on these rocks, you just want to look for that a little bit on the blown highlights. Let's see here. And then just by tweaking in a little of the magenta to balance out the blue we put in, keeps your skin from getting too cold. And then maybe even if, let me see, no, that's too much. A little bit of contrast. Just tweaking temperature until I find the color palette that I'm looking for. And of course, you'll want to do this on all of them. And this is where, you know, if you want to consider working in Lightroom, it makes it nice and easy to do that. ACR is an individual image at a time. In Lightroom, you could select several that were right in the same location and make the same changes to all of the images right away without having to go through and retweak each image. Okay, and then I'd probably run an action on this, but let me just put it side by side so we can get a look at it. And based on just your last images being light and airy, you know, I would just maybe have edited this so it was a little lighter. I think I would still run an action or something on it to get it, you know, maybe a little more center focused and a little darker on the edges. You have it somewhat dark, but I think this color palette seems a little more consistent with some of the images that you showed us. So that's something that you want to consider and see, you know, how you like your greens. Greens is really a good neutral base thing to look for to figure out whether you like them cooler or warmer. This is clearly warmer, and this is definitely cooler. It tends to lend to the more blue-green side of things. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're editing and find which way you prefer it and go with it. Like I said, if you like it warmer, perfectly fine. I would just bring up the darks a little bit to kind of fit with your light and airy look that you kind of go for in some of your other images, just to keep it consistent. This might even be great. Hold on. In black and white, let me me see here, cancel. Just doing a little tweaking real quick just to see. Maybe if you wanted something a little moodier, instead of doing it in color, is take it into a black and white look. And I would watch, this, maybe do a little adjusting in here with your, the highlights are a little bright. And again, bringing up these shadows so they're not so contrasty. But it kind of looks a little busy in black and white. You get a little lost in how busy things are. So I think that color was a good option because her color stands out amongst the green. Just watching these dark areas so they're not so distracting. And then of course the ripple. But overall, I love the concept in the area. Would love to see what else you did with it. Maybe shooting up into these trees where this light is coming in. And again, maybe adjusting her posing and stuff. But lovely image, and I look forward to seeing what you got for me next week. And bye.